Hello and welcome to Scrutiny Committee. I declare the meeting open and I'm going to start with apologies. We've received apologies from Councillor Amy Wright, Councillor Liam McCormick and co-opted member Anthony Boyle. Do we have any declarations of interest relating to any of the items? No? Okay, perfect. I'll just go to item 3. Can we agree the minutes of the previous meeting, which are pages 3 to 8 of the agenda pack?
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, so the minutes of the last Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 9th of April are submitted for approval and these have just been approved. Item 4. This is a presentation for the item and Deputy Chief Fire Officer Dave Mottram is going to introduce the presenting officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if I could introduce you to Group Manager Daniela Ranocht. Thank you. There's a little test for me there. Daniela is our Health and Safety Manager and is going to take us through a presentation on our management of contaminants. Daniela.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. Good afternoon Chair, good afternoon members. As the Deputy Chief Fire Officer stated, I am Group Manager for Health and Safety and Operational Assurance within Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. I'd like to first of all thank you for the opportunity to present this report on management of contaminants within Merseyside, and today's presentation is intended to provide assurance that the service has taken proactive, evidence-based approach to reducing firefighters' exposure to contaminants, and that we continue to develop our arrangements here within Merseyside around national guidance, emerging scientific evidence and operational learning. I'll briefly explain why this work is so important, take you through the journey that we've been on within Merseyside Fire and Rescue over the last decade, and outline measures that we've implemented, and importantly demonstrate how we assure ourselves that these measures are not simply documented but are understood and applied constantly and continually throughout the service. So why does it matter? Firefighters are exposed to a complex mixture of hazardous substances throughout their careers. These contaminants are produced whenever any materials burn and can include carcinogenics, toxic gases, heavy metals and microscopic particulates. Exposure can occur through 3 main routes: ingestion, inhalation and absorption through the skin. Whilst firefighting will always involve risk, it's our responsibility as an employer to reduce the exposure as low as reasonably practicable. This is about protecting the long-term health of our people, not only whilst they are at work, but throughout their careers and through into retirement. So the background and our journey from Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service started back in 2015 when we commissioned Bureau Veritas into doing some survey and report work for us. This was really the catalyst for Merseyside to be the forefront runners of the work that was undertaken both regionally and nationally. We really drove home the importance of hygiene and changing the way we managed incident grounds, post-incident grounds, and how we looked to improve things from that moment forward. And as I say, it did make us the front runners across the region. Then further in 2021, there was a report from publication of the UCLAN Interim Best Practice Report, but this significantly accelerated the work across the UK Fire and Rescue Service, and we started working together to enable to make sure that we're all heading in the same direction. It was closely followed by the World Health Organization International Agency for Research on Cancer that recognised that the firefighting occupation was associated with an increased risk of cancer. Since then, the National Fire Chiefs Council has produced national guidance which continues to evolve as new scientific evidence is brought forward and becomes available. And rather than waiting for legislation to change, Merseyside has continued to review procedures, benchmark itself nationally, and implement improvements wherever appropriate. This slide is just some of the media interest that we've had since 2021, since the report, and just to show that it's not a static subject and that news reports and media interest is continuously evolving and continually getting new information and new interest there and thereabouts. So what's changed for us in Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service? It's our people and culture, procedure, equipment and stations. So our approach has been comprehensive. It's not focused on one single procedure, but creating multiple layers of protection within the system, including updated operational procedures, improved decontamination arrangements, personal issue of personal protective equipment, station zoning with red, amber and green zoning, clean cab arrangements, improved laundering arrangements, additional respiratory protection and improved equipment management, as well as increased awareness through our training programmes and communication across all our teams across Merseyside. These measures are embedded now within our service instructions and operational guidance, providing staff with clear expectations before, during and after an incident. And speaking from a personal note, I can say that culture has definitely changed. Back 19 years ago as a probationer, it was, you hadn't worked hard enough if you came out of a fire dirty, you hadn't worked well enough if your kit wasn't filthy, whereas now you come out of a fire and it's almost being, why are you so dirty, why are you not like that, go and get clean as quick as you can and follow the protocols. So the culture has definitely changed on the incident ground as we speak. So embedding best practice then, one of our priorities has been ensuring that our procedures remain aligned with national best practice. We undertake a comprehensive gap analysis against national recommendations. This has enabled us to identify areas requiring further development, whilst providing assurance that we already meet or exceed the expected standards. More recently, we have developed specific COSH assessments relating to contaminants, and these have been shared regionally as an example of good practice, allowing our neighbouring fire and rescue services to benefit from the work undertaken here in Merseyside. The collaborative approach reflects our commitment not only to improving our own arrangements, but contributing to improvements across the sector. Okay. So governance through collaboration. So before any significant change is introduced across the service, it follows an established governance process. Every new piece of scientific evidence, national guidance or local learning relating to contaminants is considered through our Health and Safety Committee. The committee provides an important forum for collaborative decision making, and it brings together representatives from across the organisation, including health and safety, operational response, representative bodies, department leads, and a representative from the Fire Authority. This ensures that decisions are not made in isolation, but are informed by operational experience, staff representation, scientific evidence, and organisational risk. It also provides us with transparency, challenge, and collective ownership of the decisions that we make. As a result, when a new procedure is introduced, they have already benefited from robust discussion and agreement across the organisation. I think one of the strengths of our approach is that we are all pulling in the same direction, and our shared objective is protecting the health and well-being of our people, and that collaborative approaches enabled us to implement meaningful improvements whilst also measuring and maintaining operational effectiveness. Assurance, not assumption. I believe that this is probably one of the most important slides in today's presentation. Having policies and procedures is only part of the picture. The real question is, how do we know that it's working? Within Merseyside, we have deliberately moved away from relying solely on policy and procedure. Instead, we undertake reality testing through operational assurance framework. Our officers visit stations and engage directly with crews. They observe working practices and they inspect appliances and workplaces, and they ask firefighters questions about contaminant management and are not afraid to put it through our systems to learn and to send that learning and training across the service and continue the learning loop. They seek evidence that procedures are generally understood and are continually applied. This provides assurance that our controls are becoming embedded within everyday operational practice rather than just existing on paper. Another significant development has been strengthening the organisational learning. Learning does not stop when the incident ends. Information is gathered through our Oceans reporting system, debriefs, operational assurance activity, national learning and reviewed, and where appropriate incorporated into our quarterly operational learning brief. That provides staff with timely updates on emerging themes, health and safety learning, contaminant management and national developments. The aim is to create a positive learning culture where improvements continue to evolve as operational experience and scientific evidence develops. So where are we with alignment with national strategy? Our arrangements continue to align closely with the National Fire Chiefs Council Contaminant Programme. We also consider guidance from the Health and Safety Executive along with scientific research. And it's important that we recognise that this is not a static subject. It will evolve, there will be further evidence and there will be further ongoing academic reports. As evidence develops, our procedures will continue to evolve. The commitment to continual improvement that Merseyside shows remains aligned with national expectations while maintaining a strong focus on firefighter health. HSE supporting the cause. Back in summer 2019, the Health and Safety Executive monitors the progress of the Fire Brigades Union research and provides assistance in implementing recommendations which seek to improve the work environments of UK firefighters. This should include measures to minimise contamination from clothing and equipment and reduce the overall exposure of firefighters, their families and the public. So how have we started to do that since that statement? Since the last update provided to members, there has been considerable progress. Station zoning is now implemented and fully embedded across the service. Service instruction 0998, management of contaminants, is fully embedded. Operational assurance now includes contaminant reality testing. Specific COSH assessments has been completed and shared. The operational learning brief has been introduced to reinforce the learning and the importance. A gap analysis work has been completed and shared regionally. And collectively, these developments demonstrate that contaminant management has moved from implementation into ongoing assurance and continuous improvement. Additionally, the things that we said we would deliver the last time have been put into practice. So additional electronic BAPP prompts, additional PPE for post-incident cleaning and testing, further research areas into flash hoods, so firefighters have more access to more flash hoods after post-incidents, external contamination on bins on station, so if we have fire kit, they're able to place their kit externally of the fire station. We developed toolbox talks to staff and operational staff around the importance and developed poster campaigns for fire stations, again keeping it at the forefront of everyone's mind, and again monitoring and continued and looking at future research. Although significant progress has been made, our work is not complete. Firefighter health continues to be an evolving area of research. Our priorities moving forward must include continuing operational assurance, maintaining reality testing, reviewing emergency scientific evidence, supporting national initiatives, continuing regional collaboration, and reviewing procedures where necessary. Chair, members, I hope today's presentation has demonstrated that Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service has taken a proactive and evidence-based approach to managing contaminants. We have moved beyond implementing procedures and we now focus on assurance, continuous learning and continual improvement. Whilst no fire and rescue service can eliminate the risk associated with firefighting, we are committed to reducing that exposure wherever reasonably practicable, protecting the health and well-being of our workforce and ensuring that our arrangements continue to develop alongside emerging scientific evidence. Our priority and objective remains simple and clear: to ensure that every firefighter go home safely and after every incident and enjoy the healthiest career throughout their service and beyond. Thank you. Any questions?
Sorry, can I just start by saying thank you for such a a comprehensive report. And then if anybody who wants to speak just raises their hand. Councillor Page.
Councillor Murphy was
Sorry, Councillor Murphy, do you want to speak first?
Doesn't matter. Right, yes, thank you very much for the presentation, Daniela. 3 or 4 things, if I may. Well, when you get a major fire, do you make any assumptions about what's in there? Building sites, wrecked vehicles, things of that nature, tips and so on. Or is it just a comprehensive approach? I wrote down the word asbestos, and obviously that's a potentially killer for cancer and so on. Excuse me. And so, is there any enhanced awareness of asbestos? And regarding your clothing, sort of follow on from asbestos, when in the old days workers would go home with it on their overalls, whereas presumably your own personal clothing isn't affected because you wear the kit and so on. So, and the other thing is for the general public, when they say it's a big fire, close your windows. I've always just assumed that's because of the smoke, but I'm now beginning to think that there might be contaminants in it, and so is there kind of any extra education for the general public when a fire arises of that nature?
Okay, I'll try and remember all the questions. Sorry, I should have wrote them down. Question number 1, do we assume, we usually assume the worst case scenario until we know otherwise when we go to a major fire. So we'll always go with the fullest protection, the fullest, the highest possible that we can go in. If it is a business or something like you alluded to, we would usually hold information about what risks are in that premise. If it's going to be asbestos, if it's going to be lithium-ion batteries, if there's going to be any sort of extra added hazardous materials that might be in there. As an incident commander, we would obviously look to gather as much information as possible to understand what our staff had been involved in, to be able to then decontaminate and reduce that exposure as much as possible. So yeah, we just deal with that as what we're faced with, and obviously deal with it as we can. With regards to asbestosis, that has been an ongoing, it's been in the domain for a long time. We've had the knowledge, we've got the evidence, and we've always dealt with decontamination when we've gone to an incident from domestic dwellings that might hold asbestosis, etc. So we've always had the knowledge and the scientific evidence to be able to deal with that correctly for our staff on the incident ground. Obviously not fully understanding the nature of what was in smoke, what the contaminants were, what the particulates were. We didn't have the knowledge and the understanding of just how much they could be absorbed through the skin without the new research that came out. So now we have the knowledge, although not enough of it, we're able to deal with what we've got in front of us and deal with that as best we can. And regards to public safety, it's probably an area we do need to make sure that public understand more about what is in smoke and what the education of the wider community. Obviously we put the warning and warnings out during a large incident, as you rightly say, to stay away from the area, shut windows and doors, etc. But perhaps there is an area of work there that we could expand. What was the other question? Clothes, yeah. There isn't. So we are protected. There is ongoing scientific reports that state that there may be potential for some small transfer of particulates onto duty rig, but that's not really been proven or advanced, and it's an ongoing research, but it's something that we're trying to get to the forefront on, and I, in the department, I'm looking forward at is it something that we do need to implement.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Anything you want to add there?
I was just going to say, while you answered that question, that was
Okay.
very good and comprehensive, thank you.
Councillor Page.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Very reassuring, as we've come to expect. this really does demonstrate, as a relatively newcomer to this authority, but I'm not new to the world of fire services, that massive culture change that's gone into every aspect of this organisation. And, you know, when I first, when everybody started involved themselves in risk and fire services, you know, perhaps 40 years ago, you know, there were firefighters who boasted that they eat smoke. And it's not that, I'm sure that was just as true here as elsewhere where I've worked. And the change in the culture, well, it leads us to this situation that you're describing today, which is a world away from that. So obviously there's all the things that we can try and do top down, but that it is that culture change where those changes have been accepted. Allow that all to happen. You can't force all these things. Things have to be, and that's very, very welcome. The just one point, and I'm sure I do know the answer. Last time we were here, we were talking about the way that we review all sorts of different incidents across the whole piece, and I was assured then that when we do review, whatever the rank of the people being in that review, they are never feel as if they're under any sort of blame for what, and that's the way we learn, the way we progress, the way we get assurances, by letting everyone to contribute without that fear of investigation, which used to be the thing of the past. So I'm really just looking at you to really confirm what I think, that after we review anything where we think we can learn from it, that is the culture, that is the environment in which we have to carry out those reviews.
Yeah, and absolutely. Being responsible for operational assurance, it's something as well. It's not that we don't do it now, but I'd like more of it. I want more to come through. I want more hot debriefs. I want more people to come forward, tell me when there's been something good, not just when there's some learning that we can happen, so that we can share across, you know, watches, stations, departments, command groups. Actually, this was really good. It might not be something you've thought about doing before, but here is an incident. You may have dealt with it this way. This person dealt with it this way. You've got it in your back pocket if your way doesn't work. So we can learn continually from everything that happens. Here in Merseyside, every Monday, Wednesday and Friday morning, we look at any incident that has had sort of any attendance more than 2 appliances, or a station manager there, that we can talk about it, review it. So not only do the crews do a debrief and submit a debrief, we then as officers will look at it, review any learning, any notable practices, and then from that I will analyse any emerging trends, any emerging themes, anything that needs to be pushed out, and I have a quarterly meeting with the training department now that's been set up, where I can push things in and say, oh, this seems to be an emerging trend, maybe we need to do some more training on this, or I might put it into an operational learning brief, because actually it's probably just a quick reminder to staff to not forget this, or whatever it might be. So it's not, like you say, it's not the stick approach, it's more of a let's all pull together in the same direction. We've all got one objective here, and it's to make the communities of Merseyside safer, and our staff.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
I come in on the back of that. I think you're right, Councillor Page, in terms of culture and the change in that. I think Daniela's covered it. Definitely we have gone through a change, and picking up on what Daniela was saying about our officers, operational assurance and so on, where perhaps at the start of this, people turning up who were observing incidents, you know, was a challenge, I think, in terms of us doing this, and how it's been handled has been exceptional, really. So this is about being a learning organisation, about service culture and so on. So rather than those people turning up and being seen to be grading or being critical of what was going on, actually being there as in a supporting capacity. And Daniela basically said at the end what I was going to say, we've got one team across the top of our mission here, and that's the ethos, which is for one team, and exactly as you've articulated, where we can learn, we should, and we should praise as well, and Daniela's quite right, we can learn equally well from things that go well as we do with the things that don't go quite as we planned. So it's really positive, and actually that sort of dials straight into this around being near misses. The other things that Danny was responsible for, encouraging people to come forward and say this isn't quite right, is absolutely what that's about. And the Health and Safety Committee, which was Councillor Grace when I used to chair that, but there's a authority member on the Health and Safety Committee as well, which I think is shows how open that whole learning culture is really. So yeah, so it's very positive. Hopefully that reassures you in terms of your question. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions, or are you happy for me to move on to the recommendations? Okay, Councillor Page.
Sorry, yeah, I only say that there's possibly to new members, there's lots of opportunities to go and visit stations. When you get to those stations, you'll see exactly what we've been listening, what we've heard about. The colour-coded areas, the control of kit when they come back to the station, all of that will be really, really visible for us to see. So it's not just something to read about, we can actually come and see that on any station. The other thing is that when we're at those stations, we do have an opportunity to speak to firefighters about all of this, and we hear all this being confirmed. So I think I'm only saying take the opportunity to go when you can, see it in action, talk to people, and hopefully, like me, you'll feel quite reassured about how things are. But that all takes a lot of hard work. So thanks to everyone who keeps this going.
Okay, so I will move on to the recommendations. Can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 9 of the agenda, which are: it is recommended that members A, note the arrangements in place for the management of contaminants within Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service as detailed within the report and accompanying presentation, and B, apply scrutiny to the approach adopted. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, and now we're moving on to item 5, the Scrutiny Forward Work Plan 2026 to 2027. If I can hand over to Monitoring Officer Ria Groves. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that a Scrutiny Forward Work Plan will need to be created for each year. Members were invited to come to a scrutiny workshop which was held on the 8th of July with myself and the Assistant Chief Fire Officer. A range of topics were discussed for potential items to go onto the Scrutiny Forward Work Plan for 26-27. It was acknowledged that from the AGM, one of those items that would carry forward is what we've just heard today, which is the management of contaminants. The other matters discussed are contained in Appendix A, which is the proposed Scrutiny Forward Work Plan for 26-27. That's contained on page 15 of the agenda. We have a standing item that is brought each year, which is a review of the annual health, safety and welfare for the previous year. And we have the 2 new topics which have been proposed, which is the Home Fire Safety Check effectiveness and engagement. So this gives members the ability to scrutinise the effectiveness of the service identifying, reaching and supporting those most at risk through its HFSC programme, and what more can be done to engage seldom heard communities, and an update on the culture and people plan. So members that were with us last year will know that an update was provided on the culture plan, and members asked for this to return in 12 months. We thought it was probably quite apt timing that in the current people plan coming towards an end and progress starting to commence on proposal for the next people plan, members can get an update as to the achievements we've done under the current people plan, which takes us to 27, update on the culture, and identify areas we want to consider for the new people plan, which will be brought to members for approval. Therefore, members are asked to confirm that they are content with the proposed Scrutiny Forward Work Plan for 26-27 and recommend that it's submitted to the authority for approval.
I don't have a question, but in the last meeting we discussed stress being highlighted within the health and safety review, and I'm happy for that to happen if anybody else wants to support that.
I can. I know the director of POD who oversees that, he would be down as part of the update on the people plan, and I know he recommended a meeting that's just taken place, policy and resources, that he can incorporate within that topic a particular focus on how we're assisting staff in stress and feeling going through the capability process. If members are content to wrap it up within that.
Councillor Page.
Thanks, Chair. A question really on as you know, the effectiveness and on the home fire safety checks, etc. That's my pet thing at the moment. But when will we get a chance to scope that? Obviously, there's a massive, like all these reviews, there can be massive or control. When will we be able to have a look at exactly what we're going to in more detail really on that? So that's my question.
I would suggest that when the topic is brought, there'll be a presentation on what our scope is. If that wasn't to satisfy you and you had more questions, we'd have two options: to pick up through another route, a task and finish potentially, or we could bring it back if we were to focus on this is now our strategy and update to members as to how that strategy effectiveness is working.
Yeah, I think Rhea's exactly right. I think in terms of, are you saying, Councillor Page, around having some information prior to, so that you can ask some questions and make sure that it's where you want it to be.
Please.
Yeah. I think that should be easily doable if we can share what the proposal is for that and some background information ahead of the meeting. I think that gives every opportunity.
And a more detailed report could be provided as well.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, it was literally, just a clue as to as I'm repeating myself here. This could be an enormous project if we want it to be, but we want to be effective. But let's decide really clearly what bits we're looking at. What are we looking at? The financing of it. Are we looking at it's all those headings really that we want to decide what we collectively want to include.
Yeah, I've tasked. I've tasked our prevention team, following feedback from the HMI this last time out, to come back to, with part of the CRMP planning, to review our current strategy against the state, against data and everything else. So as you say, it's quite a big piece of work. I'd be hopeful that the start of that work, or certainly some of the early outcomes of that, will be presented to scrutiny at that point, as much as to say this is where we're going and this is where we are and this is where we're headed. I think that'll be really, really useful for the service from a scrutiny perspective, for you to have that and maybe offer your suggestions to it as well. So hopefully that will come together. I think one of is you can have some area for look at what the agenda for that scrutiny will be in terms of the background. I think that's easily done.
Brilliant. Yeah, ideal. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. I was in a high-rise block the other day, and there was a sign saying, in the event of a fire, a tiny little notice, don't use the lift, use the stairs. 6 months ago, I attended a talk by one of your officers and one of the managers from Magenta Homes in a tall block called the Towers in Bevington Road on the Wirral, and it was all about staying put. And so at the time they were trying to reassure people that stay in your flat, don't try using the stairs because the officers might be sort of coming up the stairs, etc., etc. And we'll be there in 5 minutes, etc. So they're trying to reassure them. But when I saw this sign last week, which simply says, in the event of a fire, don't use the lift, use the stairs, it seems to sort of what you might call, would contradict the staying put message. And then I did send it through to Dem Services, generally speaking, and Les answered my question. And I'll be honest with you, I thought an officer would reply, but Les, with his knowledge, replied. And I just wondered, he was saying things like, well, there's different types of flats and there's different exits and entrances, and so it's a bespoke and an individual personal escape plan or emergency plans. And so when it comes to scrutiny, it just made me think that, you know, where are we rolling it out? Is it a different model for each type of high rise, etc., etc.? And is that little message of, in the event of a fire, don't use the lift, use the stairs, still valid? Or has that got to be nuanced a little bit depending on the staying put message for that block?
Yeah, it's pretty much what you've just described. Each of post Grenfell, one of the things that came from Grenfell was the blanket kind of stay-put policy, and that when a building isn't behaving in the way that we would anticipate, then the stay-put policy becomes, you know, untenable really, and that's was the outcome of Grenfell because of the additional cladding on the outside of the building and so on. So what the lesson from that was pretty much every high rise, it's still reasonable to have a stay-put policy, but each building will be assessed on its own merit. So if it's got cladding on, for example, we wouldn't recommend, you know, that building shouldn't have a stay-put policy, and the fire service and attendants would be asking, sorry, a specific type of cladding would be asking for that. You know, and our approach would be to get everyone out of the building in terms of what you've seen in Grenfell. So you're right, it can be confusing depending on the building type and the advice and the risk assessment for that building done by the owner of that building. In terms of our approach when we arrive there, obviously we deal with what we see, and then we will make that call dependent on whether we ask for everyone to come out of the building or stay put. In terms of guidance to residents, I think we can't make people stay in their property. So even though you may have a stay put policy in a building, there's nothing people will still make their own decisions and their own judgment. So in those situations, even if the building may have a stay put policy, in terms of the guidance then to exit the building, it may be that lift is a firefighting lift, which would be controlled by firefighters and then wouldn't answer the call, and so on. And so it is a confusing subject. So depending on the building, I think you're right. But in terms of the work, in terms of clarifying that to residents, we've done an awful lot of attending every high-rise property, giving that advice and really going through that with residents to reassure that, you know, we've got, you know, the buildings and the fire service have procedures in place to make sure that we keep them as safe as possible from fire. So we've done an awful lot of work in that. In terms of that particular building, I can absolutely, you can get an officer to respond to you in terms of the protection advice, and Ria will pick that up. Yeah.
Just to let you know that we've spoken with protection regarding that particular query, and I've asked for them to give also a bit of an explanation in terms of the responsible person for that building, what is their expectation and what is the obligation on them in identifying the sort of stay put or you know, or not policy on what it is. So they're going to provide you with a brief just to give you background and then more specific on this.
I'm sorry, if I can just clarify, essentially there's a high-rise half a mile away by Magenta also, and so people like know each other, and so if there's any kind of confusing messages between, and so like the registered providers, I'm something in the public sector, would need to be sort of on their toes, so to speak, in terms of them knowing, you know, the different potential formats of stay put or escape.
Yeah, so from the fire service point of view, every building, every high rise, we will have assessed that, and we will understand what that is, as Ria rightly says, and our protection department will confirm if the building's responsible for its own fire risk assessment and its procedures in the event of that. In terms of the fire service arriving, you know, in an incident, then the incident commander will take charge of that, and it may be, if there is a stay put policy in place in that building, we may still require residents to come up, but we will deal with that at that time based on what the fire is doing and what the situation is. So yeah, but we can absolutely get that information to you, and if you any councillors, any members have any particular concerns around any of the buildings, that's exactly what we're here for. You can send that info, and we'll get that information to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Yeah, just to going on further from what Tony had to say, one of the problems with high-rise flats is basically social media and the press, because I remember an incident that was that we had in one of my ward, where there was issues in relation to antisocial behaviour, criminality, And what did the press do as the first move in relation to the article they did? They put the home in on a block of high-rise flats. Well, my reading of that was, it's high-rise flats, so you know it's bound to be problems there and everything else. Well, nothing of the sort. Those high-rise flats are absolute powers. But it's the point I'm trying to make. It's the way social media and the press will steer into sort of stereotypes and things like that. It's just a point for note, you know, that I've experienced in the past.
So, I'm sorry to cut you page. I mean, just as a postscript, in that particular block of flats, they had quite a large container about this high off the floor, saying, please throw your used vapes in here. And of course, a couple of the residents are thinking, you want used vapes throwing into a little plastic container just by the front door, you know, and I think that the management realised it probably was a fire risk and have taken it away.
Okay, that's good news.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Page, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm just going to propose that we accept the recommendations as in the report. If anyone wants to second that.
Yes, I was coming on to that. So,
Sorry.
it's okay.
I didn't want to curtail the other conversations, but I just wanted to give you, Chair, the chance to
Yeah, thank you.
finish in this item.
So if we can agree the recommendations as set out on page 13, it is recommended that members A, review the proposed scrutiny forward work plan 26 to 27, and B, recommend the scrutiny forward work plan in Appendix A to be submitted to the authority for approval. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. The date of the next meeting is on the 15th of October, and I think this meeting's closed. Thank you.